Like everywhere there is a, what can I say, the mela of Buddhism in the world. Everywhere is interested in, whether in theory or in university campuses or in private institutions or deemed universities, may it be psychology, may it be economy, may it be politics, may it be philosophy, may it be arts and aesthetics. Uh, in general, I'm speaking. Buddhism become a fashion. Buddhism become a fashion, and keeping Buddha's face, some Buddhist iconography, including laughing Buddha and all, sort of become a superficial factor of feel good, if I put it in that way, a feel good factor. Why I'm saying feel good factor? Because this superficiality in terms of representation, in terms of politics of Buddhist values, in terms of even social and spiritual organizations, and also Buddhist movement. I'm not talking especially in Ambedkarite realm at the moment. I'm talking in general. Sort of did not or yet to touch the transformative side of the values. It just remain at the surface, remain at a mere vocab or the fashion, as I say. It's a fashion culture, right? Like earlier speakers, professors were hinting at. The Ramesh Kamle especially was hinting about the critical cultural theory, isn't it? So those cultures that needs to go into introspection, that needs to go into criticality of values and what we believed in, that is yet to achieve in Buddhist world in general. I'm speaking, and that's one aspect. Second aspect, of course, as far as course is concerned, it if I was discussing with Brother Bodhi, and it should be 40 to 50 credit course. If it has to be 40 to 50 credit course, and main concern came in my mind is about length of the program. Length of the program. If we have an 1 year program, an intense investigation, uh, yes, that's the ideal, but probably I would say that's not enough to study such a profound embarkment in terms of what we are trying to deliver an alternative discourses to the academic and non-academic world and world in general. So that would be a bit tough job to handle in a 1 year's time. And I'm not going to speak about the what courses should be offered, how courses should be designed in Buddhist studies. Yes, this all will matter, but let me just begin with a very uh, 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 rudimentary preliminaries, in the sense that yes, postgraduate course comes after graduation, we all know that, and that's the age where students and the research scholars sort of grown a certain level of maturity. They know what they are doing. They enter into MA program, why they need to be in MA program. And often, at least the practice in my university, or even in JNU where I studied, uh, we had a freedom to choose the courses from various departments. Like while I was doing MA, I did some courses in sociology. I did some courses in Brahmi script, in Ashokan Edict courses. I also studied Pali Prakrit language and literature course from Sanskrit department, apart from my courses in arts and aesthetics. While I was doing my MPhil, we also had that liberty to do social and political philosophy. So these are the practices, at least while I was in JNU, was practiced. I hope it's still there. And even in my university at the moment, we got specialized MA program in literature or in cultural studies or in languages and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we also got the cafeteria system, means where you are free to choose the courses and the teachers you wanted to study with and the areas you wanted to train in. So basically, my department does not have MA program. We are highly specialized in research, MPhil and PhDs in aesthetics and philosophy. At the same time, we are requested to offer courses at MA level. So when we offer MA level courses, I do offer courses on ontologies, epistemologies, philosophy of culture, also introduction to Buddhism, and also Dr. Ambedkar and Buddhism. So I often ask students, why are they opting my courses? Also on concept, reality, and aesthetics. So they often say that, sir, uh, uh, in our experiences, when we study literature or when we study other disciplines, we don't we do not get enough thinking tool in terms of critical thinking. And I think yes, philosophy is a mother of uh, 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 critical thinking, or at least facilitates the critical thinking. I see the need, I see the urge of student, how they should think, how they should articulate, even in the literature and the critical theories in literature and critical social theories, and that all sort of satisfies me in a way, the job I do at MA level, at least to serve the people, students. So this is the level we are offering MA Buddhism course, if you see what I mean. This is a level, that's my brief scanning, where student got enthusiasm, energy, and the maturity that if they are trained well, they can be a potential thinkers, they can be a potential scholars, they can be a potential translators, they can be a potential even leaders in society, not necessarily political leaders, intellectual leaders. And such organic thinking, academic and non-academic thinking, is essential, and that needs to be sort of understood well uh, in terms of production of knowledge, what happens in the society and in terms of field work. So why I'm citing this, in the common conventional academic practices, uh, as far as my experience goes, little experience goes, I'm sure there are more experienced people here. Students are hardly give access to the non-bookish production of method of production of knowledge. They are often loaded by references. They are often loaded by theories, which is important. I'm not denying that, being an academic. I'm not denying it. But at the same time, the social indicators that reflects from the philosophic angle or from the perspective of how they should think at all. You see what I mean? That is missing in the conventional practices. That's the first point I wanted to make. And the secondly, why why MA in Buddhist studies? Why MA in Buddhist studies? That's important question. And as I say, it become a fashion. It become a culture in most of the university practices. Study about Buddhism, may it be at whatever level. What unique that this discourse or the churning we are doing with what Shailesh spoke with a very nice overall sort of overview of the development of Buddhist studies and the perspectives, I would say, I really enjoy. And also what Professor Alone sort of try to hint at, the pedagogic or the sort of the production of knowledge that needs to be done. And also Kamle sir, when he spoke about the critical social theories, hmm, and the social, he was mainly sort of emphasizing that. So in that light, or in the context of this unique discourse, where an intervention of a giant scholar, a giant human, a surpassing talent like Dr. Ambedkar comes in, what unique that these Buddhist studies have to cater in the production of knowledge? That is important question to me. That is extremely important question to me. May it be, uh, 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 I was browsing some sites when Professor Brody asked me to speak about it. And I gone through most of the sites and the MA, MPhil courses. We made the OCBS, Oxford Center for Buddhist Studies. They also provide a 1-year MPhil program in Oxford. There is California, Berkeley. There is a International Buddhist Institute, IBI, in California. And nowadays there is an increasing interest in the theology and divinity school about Buddhism, because the theology and the divinity school founded on the basis of Christianity in the West, but the radical theology or the critical theology that is sort of intervening into the discourses are taking much more interest even in Buddhism, or the other aspects that theology has to produce in terms of Buddhist studies. And indeed, Buddhist studies itself, may it be Japanese universities, Taiwan universities, Chinese universities, or European and American universities, and in Indian universities too. So these courses, when I was browsing, uh, it's very interesting. If you look at the courses they offer, they are interesting, and I don't blame them. They are interesting, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them because it's important to learn Hinayana, Mahayana, Tibetan Buddhism, Himalayan Buddhism, or Zen Buddhism, yoga and Buddhism, or ethics, psychology, theology, and social theory, and even Young Age Buddhism. So I see their passion, and I do not criticize them for that. I do not criticize them because I would say that is important. At the same time, uh, at the same time, what they are offering in terms of, let's say, classical Buddhism, there is a common word, Theravada in text, or Pali Canon, or Buddhism from Pali Canon, and so on. I respect that, I appreciate that, and I admire that. And as I say, I do not blame them, because that's the limit of thinking of Buddhist studies in the common or Buddhist world in general. That is their limit. And whatever is thought to the limits of their thinking capacities, they are right. Still, man like me, or academic like me, when browse the various sites throughout the web world, still something I feel that is not satisfactory. And it's not subjective, by the way. I'm not speaking because I'm Ambedkarite. So do not have any filter in your ears, or I should not have any filter in my tongue. See what I mean? I wanted to be open about it. I wanted to sort of open the discourse in terms of understanding the Buddhist project at all, altogether. You see what I mean? So yes, I love Dr. Ambedkar, but I'm not speaking because I'm subjective, I'm dominated by my subjective feeling. There is something in universal discourse, I think, that is missing. And it is again not criticism, probably it's a pragmatic criticism I try to produce. And that's where the intervention of Buddhist studies and the MA program like this, what Professor Bodhi asked me to speak, comes of utter significance, I think. The important point is the methodology. Doesn't mean that those who are studying Pali Canon and knows Pali or Tibetan or Sanskrit or Chinese does not have pedagogies or linguist or semiotics. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the the logical and interpretative critical pedagogies I'm talking about. For example, uh, Bhagwan, Bhagwan Buddha or Shakyamuni Buddha, we call it. So the Bhagwan is a common word used everywhere in Indian languages. Everywhere in Indian languages. How do I differentiate this Bhagwan from the Bhagwan I am trying to, the spirit of Bhagwan I am trying to assert in my understanding? This is what I talk about my critical intervention in Buddhist studies. For example, Shudra. The consonant clusters are absent in Pali language. That becomes Shuddha, means pure. Asuras, those who do not drink suras. So they become asuras. Or Rakshasas become Rakkhatas, Rakshakas, protectors. Pali itself has a varieties of meaning. Pali means the line. Pali means the Palan Karti, protector, the language of protection, and so on and so forth. So this kind of methodological intervention is deadly needed, where classical, word classical would translate the meaning classically. What is established meaning of the word, like moksha and nirvana. So how do I differentiate between moksha and nirvana? So immediately my mind goes, moksha means the Hindu or the Vedantic concept, and nirvana is a Buddhist concept. And because I do not differentiate between the liberative spirit of moksha and nirvana, I interpret nirvana and moksha is nothing but one at the same. This is my problem in thinking. You see what I mean, if practically speaking. So moksha also becomes the moksha in Pali, means mukti, the freedom, the liberation. Nibbana, nirvana, where there is no Trishna, vana means Trishna, or tanha in Pali, where there is no craving, there is no desire. That becomes the meaning of nirvana. Bhagnavan, van, the person who has bhagna means destroyed the van, the Trishnas. So ultimately, my all understanding goes to an inclusive, liberative philosophy, not exclusive and oppressive notion of liberation. So this methodology and this critical angle in thinking, especially at master's level, is extremely needed. Otherwise, if your flight is take off in a wrong direction from your runway, it's very difficult to change the thinking style. It's extremely difficult to change thinking style, even in the very well established scholars. I'm not criticizing the respected scholars like Gombrich, the founder of Oxford Center for Buddhism. I was reading his paper about Buddhist aesthetics, and he was saying Buddha merely used the images for sake of communication, but as such there was no Buddhist aesthetics. But in my at least little research on Buddhist aesthetics, I find a very strong germs that Buddha gives to establish a Buddhist aesthetic theory. When he is commenting on Gandhabas, when he is commenting on the Veena, and even in Bhavachakra, Buddha is shown with the instrument Veena in the Dev realms. the Devloka realms, and the image we find in Ajanta. Professor Alone is expert on that. He can certainly educate us. So you see, I'm simply hinting at the reminiscence that Buddhist philosophy has sort of thrown profoundly in terms of aesthetics, philosophy, even to some extent metaphysics, the ethics, an epistemological foundation of it. And that is what not has been acknowledged at fullest. That is my point. I don't think that is yet understood. And therefore, I think the understanding of critical tools and pragmatic tools given by Dr. Ambedkar are extremely important. Again, I wanted to contextualize Dr. Ambedkar's thinking here. Yes, one should speak with the passion of being an Ambedkarite. That's one strength of it. But another strength of is the objective understanding that Baba Sahib has tried to produce before us. The thinking tools he has tried to give us in terms of understanding Buddhism itself. You see what I mean? Buddhism itself. And therefore, I think Shailesh's overview is extremely important. You go to pre-Ambedkarite Buddhist world. People did try. People did try, like Ayatitas or P.L. Narsu, even to Sanskrit in some extent, and uh, uh, various, even Rhys Davis and all, the scholars from the continental world. They also tried. So why Dr. Ambedkar becomes so important for us and for the world, or for this especially intervention in terms of methodologies and pedagogies and critical pedagogies? Why it is important? That's where the question arises. That's where the question arises when I try to outline a map of Yame in Buddhist studies. Why his thinking is dominating my mind? Not because I'm Ambedkarite. I do not want to carry that. I love it and he dwells in my heart personally. That's not the question. That is not the question, and that must not be a reason. But what even to non-Ambedkarite or even to non-Buddhist and the history of religion itself that needs to go into this critical thinking? That's the question before me. Therefore, in that sense, yes, Kamble sir says that Buddhism is not a religion, and I can understand the passion and what I can say, he's sort of well intended meaning not to call Buddhism as a religion, and I would agree with that to some extent. But here question comes, Dr. Ambedkar in Buddha and his Dharma, when he was writing a chapter about what is religion, he is very clearly differentiating. That's where our, I don't want to use word our, but the objective, it's not ours and theirs. I do not want to speak in that binaries and dichotomies. That's where this unique perspective of Dr. Ambedkar comes into an important role, where he says that I'm not saying Buddhism as a religion in a European theologian sense. That's what Dr. Ambedkar says. It's not the theology that intervenes an idea of religion. Otherwise, in our own idea of religion, when you ask even today, after my 10th year, I'm teaching continuously in the service of Dharma, an introduction to Buddhism course and Ambedkar Buddhism course. Whoever opts it or doesn't opt it, I constantly teaching this course apart from my other theoretical courses. I feel that is my responsibility to keep on that stream alive in the university spaces. I do it. And I often ask, who was Siddhartha? They say, sir, he was a prince, he was a kshatriya. That's a very common answer we get from 90% even people, even including Buddhists. They do not seem to understand that neither the Buddha nor Ashoka nor even his successors were Kshatriyas. Mauryan was a tribe. Sakya was a tribe. It's a Himalayan tribe at the foothills of Himalaya or the eastern Uttar Pradesh in modern time. Maurya was a tribe. Romila Thapar very clearly says, A.L. Basham very clearly says about this. So in the tribal system, there was no Varna Ashrama Dharma. So still our understanding of Buddhism and the history of Buddhism comes from the Hindu framing of or the Vedic framing of historicity. So immediately I jump on conclusion. Yes, Buddha did not believe in caste. Buddha did not believe, and he included Brahmin and Shudras and women and all, but still he was a Kshatriya. So still the fundamental frame of thinking is not dismantled. So that's where religion has a force in human consciousness, where Dr. Ambedkar very clearly recognizes this. I will try to read little bit from how Dhamma differs from religion, from Buddha and his Dhamma. What Buddha calls Dhamma differs fundamentally from what is called religion. That's what Baba Sahib says in Buddha and his Dhamma. What the Buddha calls Dhamma is analogous to what the European theologian called religion. But there is no greater affinity between the two. One, on the other hand, the differences between the two are very great. On this account, some European theologians refuse to recognize the Buddha's Dhamma as a religion. There need to be no regrets over this. The loss is theirs. Baba Sahib is very true. Loss is theirs. It does not harm to Buddha's Dhamma. Rather, it shows what is wanting in religion. If I try to understand the notion of religion, that is what want in the notion of religion, which is missing. That's the missing I'm talking about when I browse even the Buddhist studies courses. So that missing, that blank is so conspicuous, so profound, but yet not been understood, yet not been seen. That's my problem. That's my question. Still, I try to understand Buddhism as a religion in a theological sense. And that's what it comes to. And then at the very first line in Buddha and his Dhamma, Baba Sahib says, the word religion is an indefinite word with no fixed meaning. So religion has no fixed meaning. And he goes into why it is so. It is because history of religion gone through various phases and complicated processes. And sectarianism, violence, fundamentalism, the oppressive textual traditions, not just smrutis. Of course, India is a very special and a conspicuous example of it. But at this, even in the West, so-called liberal West, it is still the case. They are equally fundamentalist in terms of their race, in terms of their canonical understanding, in terms of their theological understanding. And Bruno was not born in India. Columbus was not imprisoned for lifetime in India, right? Newton was not forced to ask that if there is a third force rather more than gravitas. So these are not Indian examples. Let me not even utter a word about Indian fundamentalism in terms of religion. We all know the story very well, and I do not want to go into those areas as the story is well known to us. So religion in that sense, Dr. Ambedkar recognizes the force in a human consciousness in Buddha and Karl Marx. And even he says that even Marx's deviation from the notion of religion is not balanced, is not totally understood. Why? Because then he saw, and Marx was right in his own context, probably. Marx is right in his own context, why he is calling religion is an opium, because that's what he saw. That's what he understood. So I do not differ and disagree with the Marx as a thinker. I'm not talking about Marxism in India, right? I'm not talking about the Marxist movement in the world, or left movement, so-called left movement in the world. I'm talking about Marx as a thinker. So probably what he understood, being a Jew, being the historical witnesses of his own victimization in a historical memories, probably he's right. And that's what religion does to human mind. It sort of overpowers, even in Buddhist tradition. Though you belong to certain sangha, or you belong to certain sect, or you belong to certain identities, the notion of religion is so strong that overpowers your critical thinking. It overpowers your clear ditti, your view, and it dominates that view, because we also sort of have that, I would call it the blind spot in thinking. We juxtapose Buddha vis-a-vis other gods and goddesses, right? There is a still tendency. If not we do it, at least we do in our subtle thinking. We try to replace that with the notion of God. We try to replace that with the notion of theological thinking. So there must be the alternative of theology, that atheist and so on and so forth. So then question again comes, when you say non-theism or atheism, did Buddha denied the notion of you being a evolved person? You see what I mean? Much greater than what you are. But the problem with theology, that it possesses the idea of God in your thinking to become the great, which you can't, because you can't become the God, right? So you always carry these paradoxes and contradiction in thinking, even thinking about the Buddhist studies. So we are not able to differentiate between the history of religions that religion has gone through, and where Buddha sort of become the great hero of departure from the other religions and the theologies. You see what I mean? That's where the problem lies. That's where the problem lies. Therefore, you don't see a violence in Buddhist sectarian history, because that's the very tight umbilical knot that Buddha sort of implant or stamped with the power of non-violence, with the power of ahimsa, with the power of no fundamentalism, akaliko. It evolves and keep changing as the historical processes have changed. And therefore, again, nothing critical about what Professor Kamble has said, but it's not just dukkha, it's the notion, as I often talk with my very close friend Professor Bodhi, the notion of anitya. You see, the things are changing, they are in processes. Otherwise, even dukkha becomes the stamped dukkha. I am suffering because I am Dalit. I am suffering because I am a woman. I am suffering because I am a Muslim. I am suffering because I am a Christian minority in this country. I am suffering because I am poor Brahmin, and so on and so forth. So we will still carry these fixed marks of identities, and which will ultimately deliver us a suffering, deliver us a dukkha. But is the notion of impermanence that makes and changes the entire story upside down, because there is nothing fixed, including God, including theologies in the world. That's where the philosophies have been often influenced by the theologies in the world. May it be Spinozian ethics, may it be Berkeleyan idealism, may it be Lacanian rationalism, Lockean or Leibnizian rationalism, or even Descartes' uh, 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 Cartesian methods, the theories of doubt. Hmm? That's what it's come down to. Or even Platonic forms. So that's where Buddha made a great departure. And this methodology, this critical pedagogy, was extremely well used by Dr. Ambedkar. That I have seen no scholar of that stature as far as Buddhist critical thinking is concerned. Even the traditional world could not able to see that. Still, the Theravadin countries, Mahayani countries, and thinkers are struggling with the notion of karma and rebirth, and the hierarchies in sanghas, and so on and so forth. So that's what Baba Sahib, at the very few lines of the first pages, says that removing the contradiction is the utter job in Buddhism. So that's where the critical pedagogies will come. So we haven't yet addressed to those contradiction lies even within Buddhism. Who else can be a supreme scholar of this stature? That's where the uniqueness we have to offer, if we at all offer the course on Buddhist studies with an intervention of Navayana perspective. That's where my sort of thinking comes to. And secondly, therefore, Baba Sahib says that the religion is the force that governs the human consciousness, and religion he calls that governs religion that governs the people is religion. That's what Baba Sahib says. Governs the religion. And what is the governance? If you read the very celebrated essay of philosophy of Hinduism, Dr. Ambedkar very critically says that there is no sort of the divine governance of the God. There is no author of the universe. There is no author of the universe. In that sense, he is critiquing religion. In that sense, he is sort of challenging the notion of religion. So that's another philosophical or the theoretical point I wanted to make after theology and philosophy, that difference between revelation and realization. Difference between revelation and realization. Moses went to the, what's the mountain, brother, he went up? Tivai or Tenai mountain, I think. He went, he went and saw the light behind the bushes. Fair enough. I therefore the history of religions is so extremely important. You see why I'm started with the history of religions. He went to Tanai and saw the light, and the different Moses came down from the mountain. Right? He did not know why he is so much suffering from his even being offered the throne of the Egypt Empire, right? He was supposed to be a king. And when it was discovered that he is not a pharaoh, right? A son of slave cannot be a prince or the king. And his brother sort of left him in the desert to die. And he was struggling with his life. I don't know how he survived, but he survived. But Moses did not know why he is struggling a lot, why he is surviving without water and food, and in spite of dehydration and so many years of wandering into a desert. There is something that is driving his consciousness. That's the belief. And when he even married and settled with the shepherd man's girl, and one day he went to Tanai and revealed something, and the different Moses came down from the mountain. That's the story, right? And then he was called by the God that you must liberate your slaves, your brothers and sisters, those who are still struggling under the empire of pharaohs, and you must liberate them. Right? So he went back to the with his stick to the Egypt to liberate his fellow brothers and sisters. And he liberated them, and you know the entire story, 10 commandments, and how Red Sea was divided to come into Israel, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going into those stories, but my point here is that is called revelation, where Moses himself did not know why he is suffering a lot, what job is assigned to him, and what job is assigned to him, and how he should do it. That's the problem with the revelation. They don't have methodologies to investigate. You see my point? That's what I'm getting at. They don't have methodologies to investigate because it is revealed. It is came to you. Like I'm an incarnation. I'm an angel. Right? So you have to believe in me. I'm an incarnation of Baba Sahib. And you have to believe me. You see that contradiction? So there is no scope to interrogate. Oh, how come you can be an incarnation of Dr. Ambedkar? Kase Baba Sahib tumcha angat ale? Buddha tumcha angat ale? You see what I mean? So there is no sort of criticality, and criticality here is a positive. Please do not misunderstand my word critical, right? Critical means simply kalama spirit, I would call it, in other words. In Buddhist language, the kalama spirit means investigating it. Check into the fire of your own experience, whether it tests a true gold or not, right? Like the goldsmith does. That's the kalama spirit of criticality I'm using here. So that criticality is absent in the project of revelation, which entire world religions are victim of, I'm afraid. Which entire history of religiosity is a victim of. That is my point. And therefore, Dr. Ambedkar differentiate between the realization and revelation. If you read Buddha and his Dharma very closely, what Bhadanta Ananda Council and translate, कि बुद्ध की खोज, it was his quest, it was his search to realize that there is something more than what I have seen the reality as it is, or what I have experienced the notion of realities. That is not what I see, right? And therefore, Dr. Ambedkar puts the criteria on religion, the criteria on religion, by negating the divine governance and God as a author. So he says that religion must set on criteria. Any religion is not an exception to this, including Buddhism. No religion is exception to this. And he gives the criteria of revolution. By the way, revolution here is not Marxist notion of revolution or left notion of revolution. Revolution here in terms of the understanding the true nature of reality as it is, how it is. Am I the way I thought of, or am I changing? Or do I accept the notion of quote unquote givenness as I am given? I did not choose my parent, I did not choose my gender, I did not choose my linguistic genre or the region, I did not choose my even caste or religion. In that sense, it is given to me. But that's where Dr. Ambedkar's roaring realization comes. I'm sorry, realization comes. I born as a Hindu, but I will not die as a Hindu. I will not accept what has given to me. I will realize who am I, because I have that potential. I have that capacity to realize who am I. That's what even Descartes could not demystify the mystery of reality. I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. You see what I mean? Everything deceived me, but I think, therefore I am. And the existentialists and the phenomenologists were struggling with that question. So Sartre is producing antithesis to the Descartes. Oh, I think, therefore I am. So everyone is thinking. So I also think. If you read the Kasim Kassam's article about the critical angle on the Cartesian methods. So if I think, therefore I exist, So Shailesh think, therefore Shailesh exists. Bodhi think, therefore Bodhi exists. Right? Uh, XYZ thinks, therefore XYZ exists. That fundamental notion of existence needs to be interrogated and investigate critically, which Buddha did beautifully, I would say. No one besides the Buddha did it, because in Enlightenment era of European thoughts, Renaissance, entire Enlightenment era is Kant and the Descartes on this rationalist become the master of the Enlightenment period, right? But still they could not decode the mystery of thing in itself, done and seek. They could not realize the nature of reality because they were philosophers. They were bookish philosophers. Buddha in that sense is not a philosopher. He is not a philosopher thinking under the Bodhi tree. He is not a philosopher sitting in the departments and writing books. In that sense, he is not a philosopher. He is a realizer. He is a revolutionary. Here is a man who is coming with the notion of reality which no one has thought of, which no one has practiced of. And that comes from his direct realization, not from bookish knowledge. That's what I mean by philosopher here. Abstract philosopher or capital T thought. You see, though you have a thought of that there is a heaven and hell. You have a thought that this angel holds the key of the heaven. This is the abstract thinking. Or the Brahmin came out of the mukha of the Brahma. That is abstract thinking. That is capital T, which is absent in Buddhist epistemology, which is sort of not accepted unless you have a direct experience of it. You see, so I haven't seen anyone born out of mouth. I have not seen anyone born out of arms. I have not seen anyone born out of thighs or the feet. Everyone born out of the the womb of the mother. Wasn't that the claim Buddha made and Baba Sahib acknowledged in Buddha and his Dhamma? I am no one else but the son of Shuddhodhana and Mahamaya. Nothing else. Buddha has no claim more than this. Right? As far as the abstract thinking goes, it's very realistic, pragmatic, and realistic in an even philosophic sense. Right? That's how humanity is born or evolved. That's the question one needs to understand. So, in that sense, there is no internal contradiction as far as the Ambedkar's methodology goes, I would say. Baba Sahib's methodology goes, or you might call it Navayana perspective. You see what I mean? That's where the significance of Dr. Ambedkar comes. So, very importantly, this quotation I really loved from Baba Sahib, especially I was thinking in this context. Baba Sahib says, my quarrel with Hindus and Hinduism is not over imperfection of their social conduct. I will read it again. My quarrel with Hindus and Hinduism is not over imperfection of their social conduct. It is much more on the fundamentals. It is much more on the fundamentals. It's over the ideal they cherish. You understand? So that capital I am talking about, that capital T thought I'm talking about, that capital P philosophy I'm talking about, that's where the problem lies, which Baba Sahib is only a man probably in modern time able to decode the mystery of reality. Even in Buddhism, probably after the Buddha. Yes, many masters have tried to attempt it, but I never met them. That is not in my experience, right? This man is in my experience, right? This memories is in my experience. That's where the third point probably I would try to make. In this context, I also wanted to mention the effect of such thinking. Effect of such thinking. That's where the masters needs to aspire. He says that revolution is the mother of philosophy. And if it is not, the mother of philosophy is a lamp out of which philosophy illuminates. And religion has no exception to it. And why he is highlighting revolution here? Again, I made it clear that revolution here is not a Marxian notion of revolution. Revolution here is in terms of the transformation, the change in thinking, the disposition of mind, I would call it. The disposition of mind, what the just give me a second. What the Buddhist notion or the Buddhist word called the viparyasa, seeing upside down. I am seeing the falsity as a reality, or Nagarjunian shunyata, for example, or even you can use the word anatta, where I am seeing the self where there is no self. That is viparyasa simply. So that viparyasa is a revolution in Baba Sahib's thinking. He is making the story upside down. And you see the plenty of similes. Buddha flowing against the stream, when he offer a pot after enlightenment in the flowing river, it revolt against the stream. That's the symbols we get in the Pali canons. And even in Bhava Chakra symbols, Buddha stand out of the Bhava Chakra. I don't know if you have seen the Bhava Chakra image. Buddha does not participate in the Bhava Chakra. He stands outside it and shows the finger that that's where the way is. Like Dr. Ambedkar shows his finger, where the way is, right? So if in modern time, if I put the statue, I would put the statue of Dr. Ambedkar instead of Buddha outside the Bhava Chakra. That is the pedagogical thinking I'm talking about. If you can, I don't know if I'm able to deliver what I'm aspiring to deliver, but I'm trying. So that's what the revolution I'm talking about. My last point, and I will stop probably my my last point. I was thinking very deeply about it. Why 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 this revolution? Because Copernican revolution freed the astronomy, and Darwinian revolution freed the biology and geology. But the authority of theology, whether in medical sciences or in soteriology, means liberation, is not yet completely destroyed. Is not yet completely destroyed. This is still persist. Theology is still ruling, not still ruling. On the other hand, is overpowering the politics. It is overpowering the day-to-day life. It is overpowering the economy. It is overpowering the nations in the world. And Corona and this pandemic world has shown that reality than ever before. This is an indicator, my dear friends. Let us not be demoralized by pandemic. This is giving us a very creative chance to think how human mind functions. There is Karuna Devi Mandir in Tamil Nadu. So what not you will produce in the future. That's the indicator for us. I was upset, but then I thought, oh, this is a learning experience for me. That's where a new light needs to come. That's where the new crack needs to come, which Navayana perspective can certainly give in. The new Ditti, the Navadrusti, the new vision that Dr. Ambedkar tries to pour in the mess of religions, in the mess of religious history, and even the mess of, to some extent, Buddhism, which Western world or the traditional world are still victim of. I have 3 Burmese Thero monk as my student. They are working on notion of karma and enlightenment. Still, I need to struggle with them. Karma is nothing to do with your birth. Karma is nothing to do with your sort of your identities as a man or woman or white and black. The karma is a force. It's a karma bala. Is a force. What you create, what you do, that's what you create in your mind with kaya, vacha, and man. You see what I mean? You create your own mind. You are the owner of your karma. No one else, not even the Buddha. Buddha can guide your karmas. He will not create karmas for you. In that sense, there is no creator, even at the level of your individual consciousness. He is a guide, he is a margadata, he is not a mokshadata. That's where the fundamental difference lies, which even traditional Buddhists are victim of. So you see where Dr. Ambedkar intervenes and how my heart beats and my mind blows and my life is not enough in that sense. What Dr. Ambedkar has given task to his followers to interpret the theory of liberation, the theory of religion, the theory of critical understanding of human consciousness, which no one has done yet and probably no one will do. So our job through these projects, through this producing MAs or MPhils or PhDs, that's where our job lies, my dear friends. That's where our job lies, to produce the mind that Dr. Ambedkar wanted to produce. To produce the mind that Buddha himself wanted to produce, not by following the conventions, including Buddhism, Buddhist religion, including Buddhism. Any Sangha can become a victim of sectarianism, however radical it has started off. That happened in the even Buddhist history. You look at the Hinayana, you look at the Mahayana, you look at the Tantrayana, you look at the Zen traditions, you look at the even modern existing Sanghas. They try to reduce down to their own stereotypical system of framework. They cannot able to transcend that. That is the problem. And that's where Dr. Ambedkar radically intervenes, not only in the organizational level, not only in the Sanghic level, but starting from right from the theology, God, governance, society, culture, politics, human consciousness, individual, society, and therefore the free man and free woman and the free society. So look at the swing of thinking of Dr. Ambedkar. That is what is missing in the all prescribed and the developed courses in Buddhist studies. That is my observation. My another point on this note is, why classical Buddhism? Why Theravada Buddhism? Why Mahayana Buddhism? Why Zen Buddhism? These all words attracts, first of all, to human psyche. Classical Buddhism, canonical Buddhism, this and that. Right? Who said? I think Professor Alone sir said, or Kamle sir said, I don't remember. Why classical? Because it's a very easy bypassing the realities. It's a very easy way to bypass the socio-political and the cultural realities. Let me speak about Abhidhamma. Let me speak about Mula Madhyamika Karika. Let me speak about Vajrasuchi. No, Vajrasuchi is a radical case. But let me speak about the Sukhavati. And when I bring the lofty discourses, I am very cleverly sidelining the issue of caste, issue of race, issue of inequalities, issue of injustice. And that is very convenient way to intervene into Buddhist studies. And I don't blame them again. I don't blame them. It's needed. It is important, but not by ignoring the pertinent question that day-to-day human lives are struggling with. And pandemic again is a very what I would call a very clear foundation to understand this. The inequalities, the atrocities, the injustices, the sidelining that we have faced. So why not then man like Dr. Ambedkar has been well established by now after how many years of his death? You see, after 1956. So is it my job because I'm Ambedkarite? Is it my job because I born in certain caste? Is it my job because I belong to certain community and caste? And is it my job because my ancestor converted into Diksha Bhumi? Why not that objectivity? Why not that universality? as a thinker, as a philosopher, as an interpreter of Buddhist world has been acknowledged worldwide. When Gandhi's non-violence is propagated, where he is responsible of so many violence, still people do not understand the difference between non-violence Buddhism and Gandhi. So that's where the classical Buddhism does. So I speak about the lofty ideas like non-violence and the lofty ideas like Ram Rajyas and the lofty ideals like Hind Swaraj, but I do not yet sort of seen through the socio-cultural, political and individual realities in my existential world. That has been very cleverly, intellectually, academically, shrewd scholarly, we have been passed out. That's where the notion of classical Buddhism comes in. It is important. I'm not saying that you must not study Pali canons, but you should interpret why Dr. Ambedkar has to write the dictionary of Pali and Buddhism. Therefore, he's trying to define the understanding of every word, right? He was trying to define the Kshatriyas are not nothing to do with the clans, the Khattiyas, the agriculture owners, the Janapadas, they were local kings, provincial kings. And it was not dominant in the greater Magda vis-a-vis Aryavrata. So anyone who comes to greater Magda from Aryavrata, there was a ritual. His wife used to give water to her husband outside the yard before entering into home, and he has to take a bath to purify himself because he came from the greater Magda back to the Aryavrata. Because Aryavrata did not believe in the Varnashrama. Aryavrata did not believe in Varnas. Because they were provincial kings. They were not having this Aryan understanding of religion in terms of rituals and yajnas. That was absent in greater Magadhan culture. So this cultural contradiction that even classical Buddhism to some extent become a victim of, and that needs to be addressed. And again, I don't see any other man than Dr. Ambedkar or the man he acknowledged in his writings. That's what it is extremely important to understand. And therefore, some of my findings I wanted to share, that these differences and this critical understanding, and therefore the sort of notion of hatred that within Buddhism that people do carry. How do I say? Even established monks, established Buddhist teachers, and international acclaimed scholars and great masters and practitioners see Ambedkarite Buddhism is a sort of not fully Buddhist. You see what I mean? That's the problem. Buddha and his Dhamma was born in Sri Lanka. You know that, right? Because this is Ambedkar's Dhamma. This is not Buddha's Dhamma. Right? So even the traditional Buddhist world is not able to see what this great project is going on under the soil of Indian culture. They are failed to see these processes. Why they are failed to see? They are failed to see because they are full of arrogance. They are full of self identity, as I already exponented. Even the Western Buddhism to that extent, full of themselves, that Indian doesn't know and they need teaching and they need to be taught, that there is no scholarship. Oh yes, there is some social assertion, there is some political revolution, but they yet not reach the Dhamma, the spirituality, so-called spirituality. So what is spirituality here? Spirituality, as Baba Sahib says, that purifying your own mind and transcending the barriers. The barriers of caste, barriers of race, barriers of nation, barriers of genders. That's where the critical thinking comes in. So in that sense, I'm trying to say, when you look at the project of superiority and inferiority and the age-old continuous brutal consciousness of oppression, that cannot merely come from superficial socio-political differences. They cannot be mere socio-political differences. I cannot say I born in Sri Lanka and I am a monk since my, or whatever Buddhist countries, I don't want to highlight any country, but any traditional country, and I become a monk, therefore you are a secondary Buddhist and I am a primary Buddhist. By the way, there is no term in the Buddhist world called born Buddhist. No one is a born Buddhist. You have to become Buddhist. Even Buddha has to become Buddha, start from himself. Right? Buddha was not born as a Buddhist. And Buddha never gave a name or term to his Dharma called Buddhism. This is all what we coined the terminologies. Buddha only realized the Dhamma. He understood the nature of things in terms of Pratitya Samutpada or in terms of three Lakshanas. That's what he discovered. And therefore he thought, I must be now continuously reborn in the process of attaining an enlightenment. And now I attained it. That's the process. Siddhartha was not a Buddhist in that sense. How can you call Siddhartha Gautama the son of Mahamaya and Shuddhadana was a Buddhist? How can I make that historical statement? As a scholar or as an academic or as a thinking being, I cannot make that statement. So in that sense, no one is born Buddhist in the West or in the East or in the traditional Buddhist. You have to become Buddhist. Baba Sahib became Buddhist. And so his follower needs to be a Buddhist. In that sense, you have to convert every day. That's the spirit of Baba Sahib's Dare Kane Dare Kala Diksha Dya. Help everyone to become Buddhist. Convert them. It's a process of conversion. In that sense, Brother Bodhi and I often discuss, it's a process philosophy. It's not an absolutistic philosophy like the Berkeleyan idealism or Leibnizian monadology or the Platonic forms and the Vedantic Atmavad. In that sense, it's not an absolutist philosophy. It's the process philosophy where I need to convert every day to become a advantageous or the progressive person. So in that sense, the differences and the hatred, brother, do I have 5 minutes, brother? Last 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay,
yeah.
5 minutes, I will conclude. So these differences cannot be mere superficial differences. And so to maintain this indifferentism, as Dr. Ambedkar very rightly says in Annihilation of Caste, indifferentism is the greatest disease that humanity can encounter. So Buddha removed this indifferentism, right? Between man and woman, and between among caste or among races or among nations. That is what relevant to me today in formulating the vision of such courses where we need to produce such thinkers and to maintain this indifferentism. And to maintain this indifferentism, what I have to do in the name of theology or in the name of absolutism, three things I have to do. One has to replace the divine ideal and make them unquestionable. So you cannot question what has been given to you to maintain that indifferentism. I have to maintain that divinism. One has to expunge the knowledge system that promises the liberation without discrimination. So only I am allowed to be in communication with the God. Only I am allowed to be in touch with the divinity, not you. You come to me, I will help. That's how this indifferentism is maintained. And that is necessary thing to do in the theologian religions. may it be fathers, popes, or purohits, or ulemas. And that's what Dr. Ambedkar was very careful of monks, or even anyone, anyone who claims as a Buddhist teacher, even in modern Sangha. They cannot infuse the spirit of priesthood in the model of temple, divinity, God, and intervention and the mediation with the rest of the human society. That is not allowed in Buddhism. That's where Baba Sahib's breakthrough ground, a new ground comes through. And lastly, to I have to give, one has to sort of divide socio-cultural system with the justified divine reasons. One has to convince that the duties of an individual on the basis of birth and the religion they born in, taking away their actual potential, taking away their actual responsibilities, right? Because I have to produce divine reason. Rama has killed Shambhuka not because he was hating him, because he was a Shudra and that is not his duty. Women has to pray namaz to outside mosque, not because they are inferior, but that's what the command is. That's what the order is. So that moral order has to be maintained in a hierarchical ways in the theologic religions. And Buddhism denies that. Baba Sahib very rightly says that the creating the moral universe is the job of Dhamma. And that moral universe he replaced by the notion of gods. Right? Niti manje Dhamma, Dhamma manje Niti. That's what Baba Sahib says. Right? Morality means Dhamma and Dhamma is morality. That's what the morality that kills the disease of indifferentism is needed. And that critical thinking probably is, I think, is absent even in the established Buddhist courses and established Buddhist pedagogies. In that sense, I think the Navayana perspective or Dr. Ambedkar's invention is extremely important. I am again repeating, no one should say this because they are born in certain caste and follower of Dr. Ambedkar. I think every Buddhist thinker, if at all they wanted to be a true Buddhist, has to acknowledge these facts. What I try to narrate in my little preparation. Now, question I will leave with all of you. How can I finish? I think Shailesh was there at Ganga Dhaba when I was discussing long back. This question still comes in my mind. How your sociology becomes complete if the 13 to 40 to 50% of social population is ignored in your social theories. How your political theories are complete when the 90% of the voters are not participating in the resources of your nation. How your economics is complete when the more than 60 to 70% people are depriving from their basic needs. And therefore, how your religion is complete if your God himself is a discriminatory in nature and deprives the civil rights and the human rights, basically, doesn't give them the inclusiveness in their consciousness. How your project of liberation will be finished if you are divided into a caste, race, and the genders. That's what the question still needs to be acknowledged. And if Buddhism or Buddhist scholars or Buddhist studies or any doctorate or MPhil or masters in Buddhist area does not address these fundamental questions and questions their ideal itself, I think our job is unfinished. And that's where the program needs to think very carefully. That's what brothers and sisters I have to say today.